Hey guys, I'm Ryan Bass, one of our anchors here at 10 Tampa Bay, and I'm so excited to share with you this new YouTube series that we're starting called Safe Space, which is exactly what it is, what it's intended to be, a safe space for us to come and have these conversations and break down these walls and these barriers and the stigmas regarding mental health. We're going to bring up issues related to that and topics directly with our panel of experts, so that way we can provide you with the tools to improve your everyday mental health. I've been going to therapy for years now, and I am so much better in every way because of it. Anxiety, depression, self-confidence issues, relationship issues, you name it. I've battled it in therapy, or I'm currently battling in therapy. And I think opening up about those imperfections and coming to terms with them has helped reshape my life. And I think it could certainly do some of the same for you. And I hope that some of the conversations that we have here in this space will help empower you to become a better you. Today, I'm proud to welcome Dr. LaDonna Butler. She is a psychotherapist and a licensed mental health counselor and the founder of the Well for Life, based here in St. Petersburg. They've got some other locations opening up across the country as well. But it's a healing space in town. And I thought, what better than a healing space to start off and kick off this safe space? So it seemed like a natural fit. And she has made it her life's mission to be able to help others heal and build up the community that she was born and raised in and that she still calls home today. And in today's episode, we're going to focus on living with anxiety, how common it is, the signs, and what happens to your body physically when you feel like you're having some sort of anxious or stressful situation, or maybe an anxiety or panic attack. We're going to give you 3 key strategies that Dr. Butler has come up with to help you get control when you're starting to feel anxious. Move, breathe, and connect. They sound simple, but we're going to dive deeper into those in this episode. Plus, we're going to tell you how you can game plan for some of those anxiety-filled situations that are coming up post-pandemic. Maybe you're going back into the office for the first time in 14 months. Maybe you're getting on a plane and getting ready to travel or see family for the first time. We're going to guide you through the best practices to manage that stress. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so grateful that you've started this journey with us. So let's get right into it, living with anxiety with the wonderful Dr. LaDonna Butler. Dr. Butler, I just am so excited to have you here for this inaugural episode of Safe Space here on 10 Tampa Bay and our YouTube page. I'm just so inspired by you, your story, just how much you love helping our community. And I'm just so excited to have you be a part of this series, specifically living with anxiety. It's something that I live with. It's something that a lot of people that I've come to know live with. And I'm just so grateful that you're taking some time to spend with us.
I'm so grateful as well. So anytime we can just be honest about something that is so common in our community with people that we love, with ourselves, I think it provides the space for all of us to see that we are part of a connected being, and we're not so weird after all. It allows us to be able to leverage all of our beauty and our strength and be able to navigate some of the most challenging parts of life.
You know, I was reading a quote that I believe was in the St. Pete Catalyst or somewhere online that I had read, but I love this quote from you. And it really hit home for me as someone who's gone through therapy, as someone who used to kind of shun from telling people that I had gone to see a psychologist because I didn't know what the reaction would be. And hearing this quote from you was just so inspiring. True mental health is our ability to contribute to our community, to cope with the natural stressors of life, and to live in ways that are fulfilling. You don't have to hide from this. True mental health is working on yourself, right? Whether you feel like you need it or not, there are so many benefits to looking inward and kind of doing that self-inspection. And I just love that quote from you.
I love it. And so it's my translation from the World Health Organization. Often when we think about mental health, we're often thinking about illness. And if we as a community begin to center in that there are normal stresses of life that we're all going to experience. But if we're able to cope with that through our connectivity, through our own body work, and through our own mindfulness, then we could be contributing members of society and get closer together. So I love that definition from the World Health Organization that has been reinterpreted, and I now live that as a part of my daily life.
You know, you mentioned a lot of things in here. Mindfulness is certainly something that, I want to hit on in this conversation. And this this series, Living with Anxiety, and starting with that, I was doing a little bit of research on how common it is because, look, I'm someone who suffers from panic attacks at times and lets anxiety kind of infiltrate my mind, right? It kind of overtakes you. And sometimes it's hard to fight. And I was reading that 40 million adults in the US, basically almost 20% of our population, almost a fifth, suffer from anxiety. So if there's people out there that feel like they're alone, the key here is that they're not alone. So many others are suffering around them too.
Actually, that's the number of people who report it and actually seek out support from it. I bet everyone who's listening can probably relate to a time that they got ready to take a test or apply for a job that they liked, or say that they liked a partner or not. And that general sensation of, my friend calls it the butterfly bubbles up for them. Anxiety is a normal part of our life. Now, it's when our brains get hijacked that becomes the, more problematic. It is when we're not able to make sense of the world around us or find ourselves unable to sit in our own skin. We describe it as the fight, flight, or freeze response. It is when there's so much stress that our minds and bodies do whatever it can to preserve the energy so that we can preserve our life. Those are normal pieces of stress, normal responses to stress. However, there are some things that we can do about it.
Well,
I know for me.
Yeah, go ahead. No, please.
I know for me, those things happen. And that fight, flight, or freeze response can happen on a mild basis where maybe I become a little bit more distracted or find myself being a little bit more irritable.
You notice it in yourself, right? As someone who does this for a living, you still notice it in yourself.
Yes, because it's normal. Like you said, over 40% of the population has it. So that's a part of our fight response, or that flight response of maybe procrastinating a little bit. That's a part of our mild side of the flight response, or that freeze response of not being able to move at all or putting off today for tomorrow. Those are the mild forms. When we see it in drastic ways, it's when people run away from major responsibilities or find themselves being more defensive of their own personhood in a way that people may misinterpret, or literally freeze and not be able to move in some of the most dangerous situations. Again, that's on the more extreme side. Those are all responses to stressors in our life. But there are some things that we can do about that.
Well, and I loved the science behind it that you kind of got into here. And I wanted to touch on that for a second because, look, I'll be open. I experienced one last week while I was at work. I was experiencing a panic attack, and I had it before. It had been few and far between, but I noticed kind of that amygdala hijacking, right? It was your body's response. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I started sweating. It was my mind was racing, and it was your body kind of saying, hey, something's wrong here. It's like the internal alarms going off, right? Can you take me through kind of what the body goes through? Because I started feeling it last week, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that maybe don't realize what's happening to their body, but it is that frontal lobe kind of shutting down and your emotions taking over, right?
Absolutely. Well, you described it so well, right? Our bodies are saying, hey, what's happening? And we're getting rid of any extra energy, any extra weight, so that in the time, if there is a bear or if there is a dangerous situation, our bodies are doing what they are built to do, which is to protect themselves. So we shed anything that would slow us down. So whether that's the sweating, we're raising our ability to be able to run and get our energy together. We sometimes lose fluids from all aspects of ourselves. We don't necessarily need to be thinking about the great theory, so we lose that thinking part of our brain so that we are ready to move, we're ready to survive. And that is appropriate in times of significant stress, right? I'm not a hunter, but if I'm a Florida girl, and if I happen to walk outside and there was a gator, I don't necessarily need to know what type it is, of gator it is. I need to get out of there, right? I need to get out
Your
of there.
body's like, yo, I gotta go. Like,
Gotta
right?
go, right? I need to go. And so all of us, we don't want to calm that down. We need to be responsive to dangerous situations. However, there is it when we overstimulate that, or when we find ourselves seeing gators in the middle of the day when there is clear path, that's when we need to actually get some support, so that we can calm that stress response down, so that we can begin to think through it.
I like how
So
you say gators in the middle of the day. And I know you're not talking about physical gators, right? You're actually talking about those opportunities that pop up where your body kind of goes into that anxious mode. And I just want to give some real life examples here. Maybe you have a conversation that's coming up with your boss that might be something uncomfortable. Maybe you're trying to resign from your job and you're anxious about how to do it. Or maybe it's a conversation with a spouse or a loved one about something in the relationship, right? And you kind of get that anxious anxiety. Or maybe you just got a phone call. And I heard this example last week where your boss sends you a text, hey, can we talk? Right. And immediately it's like, your body just goes, whoa, what's going on? Like, and you start to kind of tumble in your mind. You start to maybe go to some of the worst places possible. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on here is avoidance, because sometimes people will say, I don't know if I want to deal with that. They kind of put it off. Maybe they put their phone down. Maybe they go do some other things. But is avoidance the best strategy here to try and deal with some of the anxiety that's coming on?
No. So I love, no, absolutely not. So some people, right, they talk about in certain instances, distracting yourself enough so that you can allow yourself to calm down, to begin to get back into your logical thinking brain. Sometimes providing some space between you and the stressor, or facing the stressor, is helpful. Sometimes finding another task that is not as overwhelming or doesn't remind you of the immediate source of stress is a way. Long-term avoidance is not a strategy. Our minds and our bodies will find a way to help us to come back to this place where we need to confront those big things in our life. So I like to think about the three main things that we can do. Um, for many people, for me, when I get super anxious, like you said, my heart's racing, I'm full of energy, I find myself even bouncing, right? Getting moving, right? And being intentional in my movement to expense the extra energy to allow my body to run is one of those things that I can do in order to support my body calming down. It allows my anxiety to expense that extra energy. It allows me to get back and focus, so that I'm able to move. Now, there are people who don't want to run. So taking a shower is a whole movement. Anything that allows you to move what is happening inside of you, outside of you, is an appropriate step. The second thing is getting really still and quiet. Sometimes our thoughts overrule us, so that when we immediately see the text, we automatically begin to make up a story about what's happening. And most likely, if we're in that moment of stress, that's probably not what's going to happen, right?
We always go to the worst, right? We're like
Right,
our own worst enemies. We always go down that path where it's like, oh my God, I'm getting fired, or
right, right,
I've got to move. Where's my family going to live? Where am I going to put my kids in school? Like, you
right.
immediately start to tumble out of control.
Right. And I often joke with my friend. I said, if I was going to make up a lie, why can't I make up the lie that says they're going to promote me, I'm going to get their job? Like, if I'm going to make something up, why wouldn't I make it up in my behalf? Right. And I think that's more true for all of us. Sometimes we begin to think of the worst thing possible instead of really allowing ourselves to get quiet and sit inside of ourselves and be. We are human beings, not human doings. And so taking a moment to simply breathe, to simply allow, is one of the best steps that we can take. That's why meditations, guided imagery, all those things are so valuable in our life, whether you're a spiritual person or not. You can find readings that will slow yourselves down enough to be able to just be still. I'm a water girl, so I'm driven. That's why probably why I'm still in Florida, right?
I'm right there with you. I'm right. You get me out on the water, I'm in my happy, calm place, right? Like that is it.
Yes. So getting out on the water, getting in a place of beauty is one of the other strategies. So that's that second piece that attends here. The third piece, right, that attends to our thinking part of our brain, our processing piece of our brain, is best done in community and in connection with other people. We are built and wired for relationship. And so when we need to test out our thoughts or our theories about what's happening, it's best done with a friend or a qualified human being who can hold it and help us sort through some of those emotions. Other ways to calm and to process through some of the thoughts would be to maybe journal, write it out, reading a text that allows ourselves to get out of our mind and maybe read something that clarifies what's happening. I know there are some folks who love research articles for that reason, right? It simply gets us back into our thinking brain so we can determine what are we really seeing in this moment. So right before we started today, I had some friends over and in the midst of our conversation, we came up with these three things. We said we need to move, we need to breathe, we need to connect. And no matter how you choose to do those things, they will help us to live with the normal anxiety, normal stressors that come with life, and no matter in whatever context that we're in.
I just love those, and it seems easy, right? And it seems practical. And I know sometimes it's not in that moment because
Yeah.
your heart's racing, your emotions are overtaking. You're not thinking rationally, right? That it's your fight or flight response that's just coming up and telling you something is wrong here. But those simple, practical steps, doing those things one by one. And look, sometimes you might be in a scenario where you can't move right away, right? Or
No.
sometimes you might be in a scenario where you can't call a loved one or a friend or your therapist, right? So just being able to kind of center yourself. And I read this too, and I was listening to a podcast on explaining anxiety from 10% Happier. I don't know if you, have from Dan Harris, and it really hit home with me. And it was pause, right? Pause for a minute. Just cross-examine yourself. Think, and even if you can't move, if you can't call somebody, pause, cross-examine yourself and think about the thoughts. Ask yourself, what data do I have to suggest that I'm going to get fired here, right? Like I've been with this company for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I've done this. What data is there to prove that I'm going to get canned, right now? So I think that was something that really hit home for me. Do you think that that's practical? Like, let's say you can't get out of the moment, to just kind of pause and start to analyze and ask yourself, right?
I 100%. Some people will resonate with pause. I have a friend, her name is Russia, and Russia knows me enough to see that when I'm moving a bit, I'm moving all around, I'm rearranging other people's lives as a way of managing my own unmanageability. She will say, LaDonna, go sit down somewhere and drink some water, right? It's not, she will say, sit down and have some water. Now that's friend to friend, but that's the science of it as well. We are cooling our systems down. We're allowing ourselves to be grounded and centered. We are sitting back and allowing things to occur. We are pausing and getting really, really clear about what is our next right move. And in moments of crisis, in moments where I will even say the anxiety begins to get the best of us, sometimes the best thing to do is simply sit down and drink some water. And the rest of you, I promise, will occur. You'll have time to process with a therapist and a friend. I promise you, you will have time to take that jog or that great shower or get your crystals or whatever it is that you need to do. But the first step is sit down somewhere, get quiet, drink some water, nourish yourself, and then begin to work through the next steps of the process of living with anxiety.
I I just love that. And it's so helpful. And it's something to remember, like that it's just a 3 easy process step to try and recenter yourself when you feel some of that anxiety coming on. And Dr. Butler, we're in a place right now in society, in the world, where we're coming out of, a pandemic that
Yeah.
this planet hasn't seen in a century. And so there's a lot of stressors and anxieties associated with that, whether it's return to work anxieties. At our job, we're starting to have more people come in the building. It's kind of weird, having people next to you again. Like there's that kind of like, am I supposed to be this close? Am I doing something wrong? Right. And maybe it's traveling. Maybe you're getting on a plane. You want to go see your loved ones. Maybe you're vaccinated, but you're still kind of not really comfortable with someone sitting next to you. Maybe you're in the middle seat. Now you got 2 people next to you. Or let's say you want to go to a concert. Like there's that social anxiety. Should I go to that big event, or should I have friends and family over? So I guess take me through like the real life scenarios right now that people are dealing with post pandemic, and how to handle some of those stressors and anxieties, and what your best advice would be.
I think you named it, Brian. One of the strategies that I use in life is when people name it, we allow it to simply be. So from family gatherings, taking family vacations, individual work assignments, that travel bans are now being lifted, and people are required, no matter their sense of anxiety and readiness or not, people are required to travel again. Things are moving. People are coming back to the office, and restaurants are now at 100% capacity, regardless if you're ready for that or not. And having some social anxiety is normal during this time. Even being conscious of other people's anxiety is anxiety, right? And wanting to be mindful and respectful. And so we're going to go back to those 3 main strategies that we want to really get really quiet with ourselves and think through our planning for moments when we're going to be in close proximity. So think about, how do you take the steps to be as comfortable as you can be in very uncomfortable situations.
So is it kind of like coaching yourself prior to being in those scenarios, right?
Absolutely.
Is it like having a game plan? Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna be on the plane. I'm gonna be traveling. I'm gonna be at the airport. Here's my game plan if this comes up, right?
Yes. So planning really helps for anxiety. And then in the midst of it, so that's before you plan, right? You need to arrive early so you can separate and get a good seat, whatever it is, you can do your planning in that way. If you want to travel alone and drive, again, that goes back to planning. During the event, if you find yourself facing a situation where you're like, oh my goodness, this is so uncomfortable, thinking of what is the next right move in this moment. So having an anchoring thought, an object to help bring back to center, is something that we want to do. So I was in an elevator. I had my plan. I got there early. I was in the elevator all by myself, right? I had a whole strategy about how I was going to make it up just 4 flights, right? Then there was a party that got on the elevator with me, and everybody was just happy.
I'm already feeling some of that anxiety. Like, oh,
Right.
God, here, what are we doing? Right?
There was no social distancing, right? And so what I needed to do for myself was this, again, the pause, because there was nothing that I can do in this moment. We were in it. So I had to tell myself, there's nothing that I can do in this moment. We're here. And so that acceptance, and then immediately, I took my mask out, my mask, and put it on, because that was the one thing that I could do. Now, whether it was just for my own mindfulness or not, that's what helped me in that moment. For others, whatever that strategy needs to be, whatever anchoring device that you need, that's fine. But acceptance of what is is a strategy. Like this is happening and we get to breathe through it. I took my breath. I took a moment and I went up the two flights and I was fine, right? The third, the after event, I said, you know what, LaDonna, this is the reality. So the debriefing, right? So I had some friends I was able to talk about it with. I got Ryan that I can talk about it with on national TV, right? We talk about our experiences. So that's the third step. So the pre-plan, what happens in the middle, what you're going to do in the moment, and then the afterwards of debriefing and getting really, really clear about what is and re-establishing a sense of safety is what we do. Because in life, we're going to be hit with stressors. There are going to be times that we are in situations we can't control everything. We can do our best to plan. We can do our best to be mindful and pause and breathe in the moment. And then we connect with others and we'll make allowances for ourselves and other beings to simply be human. That's how we live with anxiety.
I I mean, boom, like it's awesome to just hear. And I can tell you're passionate about this too, Dr. Butler. And there's so many areas that I want to go into. We don't have time on this session, but I'd love to at a further time, whether it be, meditation practices, because that's so important. It's something I've heard so many times of people saying this can help you in moments where you really need it, or whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder, or there's so many different levels and layers to it. But for this purpose, I'm just so happy that you gave us some practical things to work on. And I can tell this is your calling, right? And I wanted to get into a little bit of you, your background, the Well for Life in St. Pete, how it started, what motivated you to have a safe space, a healing space for your clients to come to.
Right. So Well was birthed out of my own desire and needs for a well. I looked it up. A well is a gathering place. It's where we draw from the source of life, water, the nourishing space. And so for me, I needed a place to draw from. I needed a place that I felt like I could connect with other humans around my work and around my own healing journey. And so the well was born out of that space. And here we create opportunities to heal through our connection, through our ways of learning, and through our service of others. That's the way we do it. And so here at the Well for Life, everyone is invited. We have healing dialogues, just like what we're doing right now. We're just talking, right? And being human with one another.
It's therapeutic just to talk about it.
Right? We are only as sick as our degrees of separation. So the moments that we can begin to get really connected with each other, that allows us to experience this collective healing, which is one of the best ways that we can actually do life. We do life together. The Well actually provides direct clinical services. So from individual, group, family counseling, that's a service of the Well. And then what I love most is we do service in community. So we bring folks together, again, because as we are connected with each other, we become well together. And so we invite people to connect with us, learn with us, serve with us, because it is the way in which we navigate our ability to make meaningful contribution to our world.
I wanted to ask for those that are interested, because it just calmed me down hearing how safe and healthy of a place the Well is. Like, if there's those that are watching or listening that maybe live in the area, maybe they don't, how do they connect with you, and how can they learn more about the Well and maybe be a part of it?
Absolutely. So we are headquartered in St. Petersburg, Florida, and you can visit our website, www.thewellforlife.org. So that's www.thewell, WELLFORLIFE.org. And it has a listing of our activities, our events. We are hybrid, so you can join us online for some of our conversations and events and trainings. And then we have several community-based events. As we expand, we have spaces in Georgia, We have spaces in Ohio. And so as we expand the model of the well, we encourage your audience, we encourage those who are listening today to connect with us and learn about the model. We're happy to share it so that there can be a well in every community.
How awesome was that? I mean, you can just tell the passion that Dr. LaDonna Butler has for helping others and getting them to realize that mental health is okay, and working on your mental health and the stigma around it. It is normal to go through some of these things that we go through in life, right? And dealing with anxiety. I loved some of the ways we got into that today, talking about how common it is. You are not alone. If you have these anxious situations, maybe you have panic attacks, or maybe you're in the scenario where you feel like, oh my God, the worst is going to happen, or I just got that text from my boss, or I just got that call from my romantic partner. Like, what is going to happen? The worst, my world is going to come crashing down. These are some practical steps that she gave us today to kind of just pause, reset, connect, breathe, get out of your body, move a little bit to make sure that you can better yourself and just get back to that rational thinking, right? And get back to that space where you are thinking rationally and not just emotionally. And I also love some of the practices she talked about with post-pandemic, right? Coach yourself if you're going into those situations. And if you're encountering in the middle of one of those anxious situations, a bunch of people are getting on the elevator and maybe you're just not comfortable, there's ways to coach yourself through that. And on the back end, check in with yourself, realize, hey, I got through it. Everything's going to be okay. And again, if you want to check out her work at the Well for Life, I encourage you to do so. I hope Dr. Butler is a regular on this series. Again, her passion, her love for this, it just shines through. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode on Safe Space, Living with Anxiety. Hope you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you back here again soon. I'm Ryan Bass. Thanks, guys. See you soon.